First at 4, breaking news as Detroit's police chief reveals more than 150 of his police officers are now quarantined. Plus, Paula is tracking classroom confusion.
Yeah, so Karen, the state sends out clarification on remote learning and whether or not it'll count academically, and you guessed it, it creates absolutely more confusion.
All right, Paula, also we'll bring you up to date on the weekend forecast because we know so many of you are counting on getting outside. Temperatures are plunging. Where will they land? Find out next, First at 4.
Local 4 News starts now with a breaking news alert.
Good afternoon, I'm Karen Drew. First at 4, we are tracking 2 big stories connected to the coronavirus crisis. There are still some big questions over the academic futures of our students. But first, coronavirus hits the Detroit Police Department hard. Let's go live to Mara McDonald. She's at DPD headquarters this afternoon with the very latest. Mara.
Hi, Karen. You know, the chief just updated us on what the current situation is, so let's look at the numbers and let's break it all down. Number 1, the chief says that they have 152 officers in quarantine as we speak. 130 of those officers were ordered by the Detroit Police Department to quarantine. An additional 22 of those officers were ordered by their own doctors to quarantine. They currently have 5 officers at this point who have tested positive for COVID-19. The chief says they've already got procedures in place to try and keep everything around here extra clean. Take a listen.
We learned about the necessity to wipe cars down every 2 hours. And then, you know, we have to stress to the individual members of the police department, they take responsibility to make sure their workspaces are clear. Again, it's critical when you talk about a police vehicle that's in deployment 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Back here live right now, the chief says they are, and are his words exactly, managing well. However, if they're going to have a number of cases spike in the department, that's going to change things up. We're going to deal with that coming up tonight at 5. We'll tell you more. I'm live at Detroit Police Headquarters. I'm Mara McDonald. Back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mara. And there is more to talk about here, so we will join Mara for more on that at 5. Right now, the state is reporting 549 positive test results. That's more than 100 additional cases just in the past 24 hours. Thankfully, there are no new deaths to report today. We have lost 3 people in Michigan so far. Governor Whitmer just signed an executive order restricting non-essential medical and dental procedures. The governor will offer a new briefing at 4:30 this afternoon, and we will cover that live here and on clickondetroit.com. Our other big story, closing Michigan schools has thrown everything up in the air for students, teachers, and their families. A new memo made it official today saying online learning will not count as instruction hours. Now, we've been talking about this, but we want to take a close look at where things stand right now. Let's bring in Paula Tutman. She's been checking in with our educators. There's a lot of questions about this, Paula.
Yeah, Karen, and we have been warning parents and students that this is probably going to be the case because of the law that says equitable learning has to be accessible to all students, and that's just not possible when it's done remotely. But as you can imagine, with this point of clarification, there's just simply more confusion. As the week closes on a difficult and often confusing 5 days for parents and their children who are learning remotely.
At 8 o'clock this morning, our teachers just sent out some assignments and we just have to complete them online.
Since the governor closed schools, educators have been grappling with very key policy questions. How can students be educated remotely, and how can they make that learning count with grades? Today, the Michigan Department of Education is providing clarity, announcing that the enrichment learning being done diligently by teachers and being followed by students will not count academically.
So while schools are doing an excellent job of providing enrichment materials and supplemental learning products and things like that for their students, those activities will not count towards the state mandated 180 days of instruction.
The caveat is that students should be doing everything they can to keep their brains nimble and to get ahead of the learning curve. But the work they do will neither count for or against them in terms of maintaining current grades, which is throwing some parents through a loop, like Carlos, whose daughter is supposed to graduate a year early this year.
I was so excited, about her, getting out of school early, whole year early and stuff. coming into adulthood and things like that. But now I guess it's kind of pushed stuff back.
By law, students must have 180 days of instruction, with 9 days forgivable for snow days. And so depending on whether or not your district has taken any snow days this year, your child will have to make up all of these days missed by this shutdown. It means that it is entirely possible that if school does not go back into session April 6th, it will be impossible to satisfy legal requirements, and school will have to resume in the summer months, if even then.
Absent a legislative fix or legislative answer on the question, the days that the schools have been mandated to be closed will be tacked on at the end of the school year. In order for a day to count as a day of instruction, you have to have 75% of your students attend on that day. And if we stretch into June or July, we're starting to worry about if we'll be able to meet that attendance threshold.
Yeah, okay, so cue the dominoes, because remember, this has an absolute domino effect. In fact, let's talk about the teachers. So are they teaching or are they volunteering? Are they being mandated to teach? We're going to talk about that at 5 o'clock as well. But Karen, you and I have been also talking about private schools, and the bottom line is private schools are fairly autonomous. Parents are going to have to check with their private schools to figure out what they should expect. And of course, this does not affect colleges at all. Did you keep track of all that? It's a lot.
I'm trying, and it's just so upsetting as a parent. You're trying to juggle everything right now and trying to be a good parent and get all of this stuff done, and now come to find out it may not even mean anything. All right, well, we appreciate
grade-wise.
Grade-wise, right.
Grade-wise.
Okay. But we may have to go into summer school, so that's going to be a whole nother thing. We will join you later at 5 and 6 for more on this huge story. All right, thank you, Paula. Many of us are looking at the things we touch every day in a whole new way. We're wondering if we need to take precautions when we get the mail, take out the trash, even do our laundry. Our Dr. Frank McGeorge has some advice on handling these chores safely.
You don't need to take any special precautions with any packages or mail. In particular, there is no need to handle your mail with gloves. As with any garbage, throwing your mail out in your regular trash is completely fine. Now, as an aside, everyone should naturally assume garbage is contaminated, not because of coronavirus, but because it's garbage and it has decomposing material in it. The amount of cleaning to eliminate coronavirus is not really onerous. While viruses can survive on surfaces for hours to days, they're also very sensitive to common, ordinary disinfectants. If something is visibly soiled, the heavy contamination should be removed more thoroughly with soap and water. But for ordinary, commonly touched surfaces, a good wipe down using a common disinfectant is enough. Now, no special precautions need to be taken for laundry. Just avoid shaking clothes out before you launder them to minimize any dispersal of contaminated debris.
All right, thank you, Doc. Local hospitals expecting more possible coronavirus patients are setting up triage centers outdoors. Ascension has put up tents outside of its hospitals, part of its emergency preparedness protocol. The hospital is doing this to separate people who suspect they have been exposed to COVID-19 from the rest of the patients, the staff, and hospital workers.
So it's good that we have a system in place where we can triage these people, and the ones who need to be hospitalized will be hospitalized. And those who simply need instructions will be given the instructions, and then they can go home.
Health officials advise you to call your doctor if you feel like you have symptoms instead of going to the hospital. The U.S.-Canada border will close to non-essential traffic. That happens tonight. The border will close to non-essential travel at midnight. Non-essential travel means no crossings for tourism or recreation. Crossings for work, healthcare, and trade will not be affected. The Department of Homeland Security says in a statement the U.S. and Canada will re-evaluate the closure in 30 days. Also, the Windsor Tunnel tells us it will only take credit, debit, and NextPress, no cash. President Trump announced new steps today to make life a little easier during the coronavirus pandemic. They were part of his daily briefing, but life is getting increasingly difficult from coast to coast. Let's go to Kimberly Gill. She is in the newsroom. And Kim, taxpayers and college graduates are going to see some relief.
Yeah, Karen, you're right. Good afternoon to you. We had heard the government might push back the deadline to file our income taxes, and today that became official. Right now, the president says the filing deadline for your federal taxes will be moved to July 15th. instead of April 15th. He also announced the government is waiving interest on student loans, and borrowers can suspend their payments for at least 60 days. Nationally, California and New York have launched stay-at-home policies for all workers in non-essential jobs. Members of the president's economic team are starting to negotiate with senators on the $1 trillion aid package. President Trump talked about helping Americans. Listen.
We're not talking about a $1,000 check. We're talking about much more than that. We're also talking about doing phases. If this doesn't work, we're going to keep doing until we get it going. And frankly, once we get the economy back and once this enemy is defeated, the invisible enemy, as I call it, once it's defeated, we get the economy back, it's going to all come back to us very quickly.
And stocks were on the positive side earlier today, but started to sink after New York issued that stay-at-home mandate. The Dow Jones has been unable to sustain back-to-back gains since this crisis started a few weeks ago. Yesterday, it was up 188 points, you might remember. As the markets close, you can see there the Dow is down more than 900 points. Their worst week since 2008. So, Karen, things are changing hour by hour. We're monitoring everything here in the newsroom. We'll have any new information coming up on the news at 5. For now, we'll send it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Coverage continues, as Kim said, at 5, 5:30, and 6. New at 5:30, how the coronavirus pandemic is impacting local Olympic hopefuls. Japan says it won't move the games, but can they really train right now? New at 6, one family shares their personal story of coping with COVID-19 after an 80-year-old loved one tests positive. Make sure to stay with us for those stories and more. Now, we are in the middle of another weather roller coaster. Woke up to some temperatures in the 60s, but now they are plummeting right now. Andrew Humphrey in for Ben. Whoa, what a change.
Karen, you're absolutely right. As we chatted about yesterday, we started off with warm conditions, but yeah, temperatures are taking their tumble. In the 40s now, chillier than this morning with 45 degrees over at Metro Airport, but we're already seeing 30s at this hour. Pontiac's at 39 degrees and even chillier 38 for our friends in Howell, and we'll see temperatures get even lower later tonight. Windy out there also. Those winds out of the west-northwest bringing in that colder air at 20 miles per hour, gusting to near 30. So hold on to your hats if you happen to be venturing outside. We'll talk more about those overnight lows tonight and your weekend forecast coming up.